Okay, well, I think let me start off by welcoming everybody here to Thrive Talks. I'm Steve Parker. I'm chair of the Program Development Committee and board member of Thrive, which is the community mental health center that serves the towns of Oak Park and River Forest here in Illinois. The idea behind Thrive Talks is to bring topics of great interest and importance to the people of our community. And now that we are in this virtual format, we are able to bring this to a much wider audience as well. Tonight, our second talk focuses on the emotional challenges and opportunities for family members giving care to loved ones with dementia and cognitive decline. The Sheridan at River Forest is an assisted living and memory care facility that is sponsoring tonight's presentation. And before I introduce our speaker, Dr. Darby Morhardt, I'd like to invite Amanda Desrosiers to give us an overview of what the Sheridan offers. Amanda?
Thank you, Steve and Elizabeth, for having us tonight. We're so excited to be a sponsor and become a part of the community. We are a brand new assisted living and memory care community that was built on the corner of Chicago and Harlem. I'm sure some of you have watched us being built. So even though we're new to the area, we're part of Senior Lifestyle, who's been around for 36 years, nationally known and recognized for the memory care communities that we built. We are doing programming and things that have gotten us national awards, and it's something we're very proud of. As far as our community and what we offer, we're all about supporting mind, body, and spirit. So the activities that we do, the nutrition that we provide, the 24-hour nursing, just help our residents overall thrive and be successful throughout their days. A part of being building in River Forest and Oak Park community, we're really starting to get involved and making sure that we're serving seniors that not just live in our community, but the community abroad. So we are starting to offer some educational classes here as far as dementia support groups. Our first one is going to be November 8th. And then we also have a dementia-friendly classes that we're going to start. Ned, our memory care director, is going to start doing on the 15th. So anytime that you guys want to just learn some information or maybe have some questions about senior housing in general, we're here to answer your questions and support you in any way that we can.
Wow. Thanks, Amanda. It's so great to have you as a resource in our community. And now what I'd like to do is introduce our speaker. Actually, what I'd like to do is brag a little bit about our presenter, Dr. Darby Morhardt. Darby is a professor at both the Mesulam Center for Cognitive Neurology and Alzheimer's disease and in the Department of Preventive Medicine at Northwestern University. Her clinical work and research focuses on the impact of cognitive impairment on the individual and the family. Not only has she spoken all around the country, but internationally as well. But most importantly, she is one of my dearest friends who I've taken great advantage of by asking her to give yet again another Thrive Talk. So I want to welcome you, Darby. Thank you. And I just want to tell again, participants, please, if you have questions, enter them into the chat, and we will try to save some time at the end in order to be able to answer any of those questions. All right, Darby, you're on. So glad that you're doing this for us. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Steve. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for your very kind introduction. And I also want to thank Thrive and also the Sheridan at River Forest for the invitation to speak with you this evening. I really do wish I could be with you in person, as I was in 2019 at the Oak Park Library, but I'm happy to have a discussion via the Q&A or chat after I finish my remarks. I've titled this presentation, Family Caregiving and Dementia, Emotional Challenges and Opportunities. And so let's start off with defining what is caregiving. So the Family Caregiver Alliance defines it as providing basic assistance and care for someone who's frail, disabled, or ill and needs help. I really like the way Dr. Arthur Kleinman defines caregiving. Now, Dr. Kleinman is a psychiatrist and also an anthropologist at Harvard. And he took care of his wife for many years, who lived and passed away from dementia. And he talks about caregiving as a practice of empathic imagination, responsibility, witnessing, and solidarity with those in great need. Caregiving is one of those relationships and practices of self-cultivation that make us, even as we experience our limits and our failures, more human. And for him, he called it a redemptive experience. So now let's just talk so we're all on the same page here in terms of what is dementia. So dementia is a general or umbrella term for the impaired ability to remember, think, make decisions, and that interferes with doing everyday activities. So while Alzheimer's disease dementia is the most common type, it's not the only form of dementia. You see there's vascular cognitive impairment, Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementias. And although dementia mostly affects older adults, it's important to know that it's not a normal part of aging. So diagnosing dementia, cognitive profiles or the way the symptoms present differ across the dementia types. And just as Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, a memory impairment is the most common, but it's the first symptom that's experienced that's the most informative of what the diagnosis really is. So it's important to know that if the first symptom is other than memory, for example, language difficulties or behavioral changes or visual spatial changes, it's important to know that it's usually another type of dementia. How common is dementia? Well, over 6 million Americans are living with dementia. And in addition, over 11 million Americans provide unpaid care for a person living with dementia. And these caregivers provide an estimated 15.3 billion hours valued at nearly $257 billion of unpaid care. So it's very expensive in terms of the cost of care, the lost income to the family, and the emotional changes and suffering. Blacks are 2 times as likely to get dementia as whites. Latinos are 1.5 times as likely as non-Hispanic whites, and 2/3 of persons living with an Alzheimer's dementia in particular are women. If you're interested in more facts about dementia, I have provided some links here to the Adair Center, which is at the National Institute on Aging, the Alzheimer's Association Facts and Figures, and also Us Against Alzheimer's. Is dementia reversible? Well, a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or other type of dementia, unfortunately, is not reversible, but some causes for dementia are. So the benefit of an evaluation is to identify the reversible and treatable causes. And those reversible causes may be medication interactions, sorry for the typo, low vitamin B12, thyroid problems, and dehydration. It's important to learn the cause of the dementia to prepare for the caregiving road ahead. So who are the caregivers? Family and friends provide most of the unpaid care for persons living with dementia. 70% are spouses or partners. And in general, caregivers of persons with dementia report more stress and physical and emotional distress than caregivers for persons living with other illnesses. So what challenges do spouse and partners face? There's a loss of companionship. The person is in the dual caregiving role for their spouse, and if there's young children, for their children, which complicates balancing the care and maintaining a life of their own. The roles in the family shift. They may feel and often do feel robbed of the future that they had planned together. Reciprocity, or that mutual give and take, diminishes, and they may feel more like a parent. It's a loss of intimacy, and partners and spouses talk about feelings of grief, stress, guilt, but the emotional impact is really different for each person. What challenges do adult children face? So on average, they're around 40 to 50 years of age. Many are working full-time and have children under the age of 18 living with them. About half are co-dwelling with a parent. And then there's a certain subset that are living over 10 miles away. What they face is that their parent isn't present at significant milestones in their life and that of their children. They're reconciling their own role in caregiving and often struggling with that ambiguity between the person being their parent, but also feeling like a child. They're also supporting the well parent, but also experiencing a change in that relationship with them as well. But it's not the whole story. And there is also an upside to caregiving. 83% of caregivers surveyed in 2014 also viewed caregiving as being a positive experience. They endorsed a sense of giving back to someone who's cared for them. And for spouses, it can help them maintain the sense of being a couple, feeling like they're doing a good job, fulfilling their vows, giving their partner a good life. There's also the satisfaction of knowing their person is getting excellent care. It can be an opportunity for personal growth and increased meaning and purpose in life. It can also be an opportunity to repair past relationships. Seeing the rewarding side of caregiving can reduce stress and improve the emotional outcomes for caregivers. Older caregivers too may bring the wisdom of age and the expectation that things happen and you deal with them. And they may have had prior experiences in caregiving. But many experience both the emotional distress and the challenges in addition to the psychological satisfaction and growth. Well, how does caregiving begin? Well, sometimes informally, a partner or other family member notices changes and begins to provide more support, reminders, directions. The pre-diagnostic or crisis phase of an illness is usually extremely difficult for the person and family. Many questions can go unanswered. There can be blame and anger, and increasingly dangerous behaviors can occur. A delayed diagnosis delays the opportunity for families to plan for the future based on knowing what lies ahead. The diagnosis of dementia formally initiates the caregiving journey. The diagnosis will, or it should, identify the stage of the illness, suggest medications. While our medication therapies are modestly effective at best, it seems clear that starting treatment earlier leads to better outcomes. And it also, an early diagnosis, helps you focus on the person living with dementia. Once a diagnosis is made, families generally feel a deep sense of sadness and a variety of other difficult emotions. But there can also be a relief as well, now that they know what they're dealing with. The anxiety surrounding the symptoms actually goes down once a diagnosis has been made. Unfortunately, caregivers' needs are not often acknowledged within our medical settings. You may be given a referral to a caregiver support agency, and many caregivers describe not being given any resources for the path ahead. How do families react to the diagnosis? Well, there's a range of reactions, and they may change over time. Initially, there may be shock, and even when the diagnosis was expected. There could be denial, not feeling ready to deal with this reality, or acceptance. If this is what it is, we will deal with it. The response of the person who receives the diagnosis also impacts the family. Their reactions may be the same as the rest of the family or different. There's often a lack of insight, which is actually a symptom of dementia. And while it may look like denial on their part, they may not have the capacity to fully appreciate what is happening to them. However, this difference in reaction between the person with dementia and the family can make the other feel that much more isolated and alone. So after you get a diagnosis, who do you tell? Well, professionals such as your doctors and lawyers and accountants must be informed in order to provide competent service and advice. Planning needs to be done, getting powers of attorney, including the person with dementia if they're able to participate in the decision making. So doing that early on in the process is really important. And finding professionals versed in dementia care and finding a doctor to work with you is essential. This slide basically shows you all the possible people that could be involved in your life as a caregiver, caring for someone with dementia. So you've got maybe a neurologist, a neuropsychologist, primary care doctor, and social worker, but there's a lot of other professionals and therapies to take advantage of to help you through the caregiving. What are effective coping mechanisms when faced with dementia? Well, of course, acceptance and asking for and accepting support is going to be extremely helpful as you embark on this time. Acceptance is not about giving in. It's not a passive response. It's a response that enables you to acknowledge the difficult and painful emotions you're facing rather than fight against them. You can use your energy then to make the situation as good as it can be, because fighting your feelings really drains energy better used to engage what you're now dealing with. And it doesn't mean you don't get angry, frustrated, sad, and even mean. When you get this way, it suggests that you need more support. So the importance of self-care. There are lots of support groups. And we heard about the support groups that are now being offered at the Sheridan. Individual therapy, employee assistance programs for those of you who are working, informal supports, basically friends, family, and then those caregiver and disease associations. it's really not selfish to focus on your own needs when you're a caregiver. So I want to next show you a short film, or it's a clip from a Today Show. This is a result of a project, a storytelling project called Don't Look Away. And we worked with a number of couples who were living with dementia to craft and share their story. And this clip really does illustrate how this particular couple has adapted to living with dementia. I hope you find it helpful.
It's known as the long goodbye. As too many of you know, Alzheimer's is a neurodegenerative disease that robs its victims of lifetimes of memories and slowly takes from families and friends the vibrant people they've known and loved. For our Sunday closer, Jenna Bush Hager introduces us to a program that helps to save what soon will be lost.
Darby, you need to unmute yourself because we can't hear the sound anymore.
I'm sorry.
There's such power in a love story.
Mark made me feel safe and secure, and I thought he was cute too.
And even more power in sharing it.
That winter, I bought a ring and proposed to Margaret by candlelight on Christmas Eve. Thankfully, she accepted.
That's especially true for Mark and Margaret Zoomdahl.
You've been together for 25 years.
We've been married for 25 years. We've known each other for 40 years or more because we were friends from the beginning.
The two are writing and performing the story of their life together.
That one sentence there.
Because for Margaret, these beautiful memories are slowly slipping away.
It feels very devastating.
Margaret is one of more than 5 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease.
It's like it robs you of who you are and some of the wonderful memories that I've had.
But Alzheimer's also takes a toll on partners.
You don't want your relationship defined entirely by Alzheimer's, but it is difficult because you're constantly reminded.
Mark and Margaret are getting help dealing with the disease, thanks to a special program at Northwestern's Cognitive Neurology and Alzheimer's Disease Center.
We take them through an 8-week storytelling workshop.
The goal is to focus on each other.
It always reminds them why they fell in love. So it allows them to say, hey, we're more than this diagnosis.
What was it like to relive all these memories from 25 years ago?
It was great.
The history that we have together, the story helps bring that out.
Doing it as a partner, as a team, and it made it very fun. We laughed a lot, we cried a lot.
We did.
A lot of emotion in that. If I can say this, if it makes sense, it makes you remember your memories because we could talk about them and enjoy them all over again and write them down.
And perform them.
For me, building the house was like fumbling in the dark, but Margaret seemed to picture everything perfectly in her head.
What's your favorite part of this job?
I love to watch them tell their story, but also see other people listen to their story and to see their reactions and see them laugh and be moved and say, oh, I didn't know.
One unintended benefit of Margaret's disease is the ability to watch Chip and Joanna remodel the same house 4 times on their show Fixer Upper with its innumerable reruns and be surprised each time.
The audience is full of doctors and researchers who want to go beyond pure biology to better understand the human side of Alzheimer's.
I'm a clinician. I see patients. I do research, and I also really want to hear how families are being impacted by illness.
We're going to be better scientists, we're going to be better clinicians, and we're going to work harder to find a cure.
It's actually been a supplement to their education.
And an education in love and resilience for anyone who hears these stories.
After writing about your life, has it been a good one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've been blessed. I mean, we've had a great life and a great family, and the story helped us remember that.
And he's the best partner I could ever have.
I wouldn't want to be married to anybody else. So.
For Sunday Today, Jenna Bush Hager, Chicago.
So thank you, Mark and Margaret. for sharing your story. And now I want to show some video footage from our 27th annual Alzheimer Day from this past May 2021, which we typically hold in person at Northwestern, but the last two we've done virtually. But this is footage from this young family. So I wanted to give you, give an example of some adult children who are very young. Their mother, Maria, is now 66 years old, but she was 59 when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. She's a retired physician and lives with her physician husband. They emigrated to the United States many years ago from the Philippines, and they have 3 children who live in Chicago. And we asked these young adult children to share their story at our Alzheimer Day. And I'm sharing just a few clips for you from their perspective as caregivers.
When my mom was first diagnosed back in 2016, even pre-COVID, it did make us closer as a family because we realized that, you know, my mom physically was there, but mentally declining. So we were all on the same team. We wanted to do what was best for her. So we put aside everything else just to try to be the best family that we could and be there for each other.
We really tried to remain as close as possible, especially with us as siblings and our dad, who we knew he was getting overwhelmed just being with her 24/7 because of the pandemic and just trying to keep her safe as well. But I think we did a great job of adapting and like FaceTime, Zoom, even being outdoors and going for like a family walk as much as possible. We just had to adapt, and I will say one positive of someone with Alzheimer's is they're not aware of what's going on. So it's just really nice that she's always happy.
One piece of advice is just to make sure that you're always laughing and take things lightheartedly. My brother is the ultimate jokester, prankster, and he loves like poking fun at my mom and tickling her, picking her up and carrying her, as you can see in this video.
We can't do it by ourselves. It's okay to ask for help, and it's probably a lot better and as smooth a ride as possible if you do ask for help.
When my mom was first diagnosed,
I thank them for sharing their story. So when there's a diagnosis, I think you can see from what I've discussed so far, it's not just given to one person, it's given to the spouse, the partner, a child, extended family, friends. It's important to remember that every time a diagnosis is made, it is life-changing. At the end of the day, it's important to take a moment to think about what went well that day, what strengths remain, and what moments of connection and laughter you had. So I wanted to leave you all. I so wish that I could see your faces and interact with you, but I would love to interact now through the question and answer and through the chat. Some of the questions that I'm wondering from you are, what are the emotional challenges that you are facing? And can you identify the opportunities or benefits to this caregiving role that you find yourself in? And what and who supports you? So I'd like to open that up now to questions and have as much dialogue as we can during this next part of the talk.
Well, thanks, Darby. I mean, there's a lot in your slides, and I do know that sitting in your room by yourself talking to a computer is not the same as having a live audience interacting with you. One of the questions that was posted was, are there any strategies for adults who have parents living at home with them?
Well, I guess I would ask, well, what strategies for what? So in terms of activities or strategies for coping with day-to-day care. There are lots of creative arts therapies and also getting, care in the home as well to help out. It's really important to understand the illness and educate yourself as much as possible so that you are communicating with your family member in the most helpful way. And so please respond in the chat with maybe some more information so that I can maybe just better answer your question.
Right. Well, here's another question that was posted. It's from a participant that my mother takes care of my dad in Northeast Ohio, and I live far away. I call them every 2 days, and one of my sister lives close. I want to know how to best support my mom and sister besides just offering help when I can.
That again, this is it's important to talk with your mom and your sister and to find out what it is that they are needing. The thing about caregivers is they often try to do it all and don't ask for help often. And it's really important for those of us who are seeing caregivers in that role that we reach out and maybe provide some suggestions or just go ahead and do things like send a meal, to take some time off, give them some time off. That can be really, really helpful. But often just really asking them, what can I do to help you make your life better?
Mm-hmm. One of the things I was wondering, Darby, about, some of the pitfalls for caregivers. I know that a lot of times, particularly depending on the stage of dementia, that they often aren't going to get the thank yous from the person they're taking care of. That in fact, they may even find somebody very belligerent and unappreciative.
Exactly.
And I'm just wondering about, some of the emotional toll that can take. And I don't know, there's some strategies for self-care, self-compassion for a caregiver.
Yeah, those behaviors are really, really hard because the person is maybe saying or doing things that they never would have dreamed of saying or doing before. And it's important for the caregiver to recognize that that's a symptom of the illness. They're not doing it on purpose. They're not doing it being belligerent or repeating the same thing over and over again to drive you crazy or to spite you. And so knowing that is one thing. And then recognizing your own limitations as to how much you can, maybe be there and be with that person on a daily basis. You're going to be a better caregiver if you take a break for yourself and do some self-care in whatever way you find it helpful to care for yourself. It can be really important. And also in some of the belligerent behaviors, also recognizing what's precipitating those behaviors. And maybe there's some ways that you can change the environment so that it's calmer, so the person is more contented. And then in situations where you've done all that you can, and the person is it's still really difficult, you may want to talk to the doctor about maybe doing a combination of medication as well as modifying the environment.
Somebody asked the question, what do you do to help an adult child who is just having such a hard time dealing with the parent with the illness that they're just not able to be there? Any suggestions with that?
Well,
It's so hard.
it's so hard.
Yeah.
I think recognizing your own limitations, and not only accepting this caregiving, recognizing and accepting that your parent has this illness, but then also accepting what your limitations are.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be that you're not the best person to provide that care.
Mm-hmm.
If you're falling apart.
Right.
Person is going to get the best care when the caregiver is as healthy as they can be and is taking care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's so intertwined.
Right.
So getting help and giving yourself permission to take breaks and maybe finding other options for care.
Yeah. You know, as a family therapist, one of the things that I have often seen is when there are several siblings and one seems to get elected to be the primary care person. And often it can create much struggle in a family that other people are not stepping forward and overly depending on one. Often it's a daughter, from what I've experienced, that especially if there are other brothers in the family. Is that something you come across where that can create much struggle in the family when one emerges as the primary care and doesn't feel the support from other siblings?
Yeah, usually there is a primary caregiver, and it usually is of a female in the family, and either a daughter-in-law, or wife, spouse, caregiver. You know, it's ideal when all the family is certainly talking to each other and really agreeing on the care for their parent. But there's often the case where there's some family members that really don't feel that the diagnosis is real. Mm-hmm. They don't believe the doctor. Mm-hmm. They don't believe their parent is as bad as the other person makes them out to be. And it may be that there was conflict and rivalry in that family beforehand, and now it's just kind of just blowing up as a result of this crisis in their family.
Right.
So allowing for an opportunity for the family to come together to talk about all of these things is really helpful. And as a family therapist, Steve, you're in the best position to be that sounding board for that family to talk about what is happening so that they can maybe come to some resolution and agreement going forward.
Well, I like when you also put into the title opportunities, and this could be an opportunity for families to actually unite in some ways that they never did before. Mm-hmm. Just moving with some of the other questions, somebody wrote about how their father had lived with this person and her husband for 15 months during the pandemic and is now in an assisted living, but that person in assisted living still thinks of the child, the adult child, as the primary caregiver, but it's interfering with frequent calls with work and their day-to-day. And they're just wondering, are there ways to encourage in this case, the father, to make other connections? Or would that be a mistake because I could be displaced, that they could be displaced in his heart and mind, that that parent could feel rejected by the child caregiver who is not able to be available 24/7?
Okay, I'm looking at, because I'm just not putting all of that together.
Yeah.
Just take a look at that. My father lived with me, my husband, for 15 months. So the day. Oh, okay. Okay. It's so hard. It's so hard. So I think that yeah, certainly encouraging him. Are there ways to encourage him to make other connections? Or would that be a mistake because I could be displaced in his heart and mind? You know, I think that is, it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and, and if there's a way that he can make other connections and for you to also assure him that he would never be displaced, that you would never be displaced in his heart and mind. I mean, that you're always going to be there, and to encourage that and to, be that, but that to encourage him to also reach out and meet other people, and maybe even provide some of those suggestions, and maybe even go with him to help that transition.
Well, I think there are several questions that are speaking to that theme of when the person who has dementia is expecting the caregivers to be available 24/7, and that the caregiver cannot be there 24/7 because of their lives and involvement. I would imagine that can be a pretty difficult piece on how to set limits and boundaries with somebody who has dementia, and not get lost in feeling guilty or shameful for not being able to be there for their parent. Yeah. Are you able to see some of these other questions that have come in, Darby?
Yeah. What are your suggestions for a caregiver staying involved with social events and settings when the patient is no longer able to attend or participate in those settings? And so this comes up all the time. And it's a matter of, if the person is really going to be overstimulated in at a wedding, and it's something that you really want to do, it's in the best interest of both of you that you go to the wedding and that the person maybe stay at home, and staying with perhaps a caregiver so that you can enjoy that time away. But it's it's one of those things that there's no one answer. You may be able to go to other events that are quieter and not as stimulating, and you can do them for shorter periods of time. But it's important to balance the person with dementia, their needs, with your needs, and to constantly, keep that in mind, that that's okay to do.
There are many questions that are coming in that, certainly a wide variety of ideas that are coming up.
Okay.
Let's see, one is just as straightforward on how do you make a decision to give a person with dementia the COVID shots? Is that an issue?
I think most people are deciding to do that I come into contact with.
Right.
It's a way of protecting them. They're very they're one of the more vulnerable people to getting COVID, and in order to protect them. But then you also want to think about, if this person is at very advanced stages and is in severely impaired, it may be that, this is not an intervention that you feel would be part of your, palliative care. So again, these are very personal decisions, and one that you should talk with your physician about.
Another theme on some of the questions is, how can I help someone who doesn't want help? But other ways it's being phrased is people who are displaying Alzheimer-like symptoms or dementia and are just writing it off as, oh, I'm just getting older. But it seems more pronounced to a family member, and this person is not willing to get help. Are there some strategies to help somebody who is at beginning stages to be able to consider getting, a diagnostic workup?
Evaluation, yeah, it's quite common. And I think I was alluding to this and talking about this earlier, that it's a symptom of the illness to not fully appreciate what's happening. So it's not just memory that's involved here, but it's a part of the brain that gives us the ability to reflect and be insightful. And that is impaired and can be quite early on, where it looks like denial and obstinance and stubbornness. And it could be that this person was extremely independent all their life, and this is, just an exacerbation of their personality.
Mm-hmm.
What often you need to take into consideration, the safety of the person, whether or not this might be, there might be some other causes to the changes that are happening that might be reversible. And also framing things in a way that might make it easier for them to go to the doctor, that it's just a checkup. Or that rather than, and I see this quite frequently, that families get into this position, and it's a natural one, to try to argue and be logical and rational. And can't you see that you're forgetting things? And I just told you that a few minutes ago, and here you are forgetting. We need to get you to the doctor. So that kind of, argument and rational is never going to get you very far. And it's only going to likely escalate the person's, rigid, stance. So it's a matter of saying, yes, I know you are not feeling, that you're having these changes, but I just care about you, and I want to make sure you're as healthy as you can be, and connecting with them, and on them as in the relationally and emotionally, and being compassionate in your response. Families, big challenge for all families is that you are the one that has to alter your way of communicating, because the person with dementia is not able to do that.
One of the things I've seen is that when a family member has dementia and starts being in a state where they think they're a little boy or a little girl, and family members often try to say, well, your dad died many years ago. You couldn't have spoken to him today. What kind of advice do you give to people when that person is demonstrating a regression to an earlier time?
Well, they're short-term memory. They're more advanced in the illness. So you say, tell me about your father. What did you like to do? Describe that relationship. What was that like? Mm-hmm. How have you been doing? I mean, that it's a rather, you don't try to convince them of something that they're not able to understand. And this is what is very impaired in their brain.
And for them, would you say that they really are back at that time? They really are having that experience?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll add a little something to that. We often say that we live in our loved one's reality, and it's helpful for both us and for our loved one. It may be a little hurtful to be called, the wrong name or something, but living in their reality really is something that is supportive, instead of, anything argumentative or trying to correct. And then there are questions that you can Google on websites that just are good conversation starters or redirecting to have healthier, more successful conversations.
I love that, Amanda. That's perfect, because entering their emotional reality is exactly what.
Yeah, that's great.
The task here. Yeah. And that's what you're probably training all of the care partners within the Sheridan to do, is that's how they live there. That's how they care for people with this.
And it's sometimes easier too when it comes from someone else, a doctor, a caregiver, a memory care director, because the role reversal is hard too, right? If you are the adult child now telling your mom or dad what to do in their beginning stages, it's a role reversal that is just not natural for them. So it causes a little strain.
When does a family member, as a caregiver, realize that their loved one needs to go into an assisted living? That, I often see people get so depleted, feeling guilty and determined to do everything for that person. And then, you know, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of stories of caregivers becoming very unhealthy. I even know cases of where caregivers have died because of sacrificing their own health. So, you know, how do you help people recognize that what's best right now? And I understand this, you know, affordability, and maybe somebody asked about Medicare and Medicaid. Maybe some of that can be incorporated in an answer around that.
It's very different for everyone. And I, as a clinician and as a social worker, have one opinion on this. And, you know, I may have, and it may be different than maybe the doctor's opinion. A lot of times families say, when will I know when it's time? And I usually say, you'll know, you will know. And I'm going to use an example of someone I met with this week, her husband is pretty advanced, and she is not sleeping at night because he's up every 3 hours. And I'm very concerned about her. Her daughter was in on the meeting and very concerned about her. But she said, I am not ready. This is an adult woman who can make her own decisions. And she does not want to let go of this relationship with her husband at this point in time. So as a clinician, I can be there to support her and to recognize and help her recognize what options are available to her when she's ready to make that decision. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're talking about getting a medication to help him sleep at night, because if we could just do that, that could really help extend this situation for a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But the grief that she's feeling, the grief of the loss of her spouse, was pretty profound.
Right.
Yeah. So there's no one prescriptive here, I don't think. Yeah.
I like how you framed that when a family member has dementia, the whole family has dementia in a way, mm-hmm. Because of it affecting the entire family system. Mm-hmm. You know, and I know that we don't have much time left in here, and there are a lot more questions, like how do you deal with a person who becomes very belligerent and very angry? What are some strategies to de-escalate? Maybe if none of these are quick answers, and I know, and there's so many complexities to everybody's family situation.
Yeah.
Are there some thoughts on that?
Well, you know, I go by this antecedent behavior consequence model. So you try to figure out what was precipitating the behavior. Is there any pattern to it? Mm-hmm. What is the behavior? And then what is it that, you know, is there a safety issue involved here? So usually behaviors are a result of an environment that may not be conducive to that person being calm and contented, because ideally that's what you want, is contentment, a contented involvement in life. But then it could be, it's going to be a combination of the environment modifying it, and it may be that a medication, just a little bit of something, can help take the edge off. You don't want to over-medicate anybody, and you want to use medication very carefully, because it can cause a lot of other problems. It can also make the dementia worse. Mm-hmm. It's a balance, and here's where you need to find good clinicians who really understand dementia. Neurologists, geriatricians, psychiatrists, who really can advise you.
Mm-hmm. Well, Darby, I know we're coming to an end here, and there's so much to say and so much more for you to share, but obviously the constraints of webinar format and time, we're going to need to kind of bring this conversation to a close. Amanda, thank you so much for you coming in and offering and revealing to our community the benefits of having the Sheridan right at our doorsteps. That's really terrific for us here. And so once again, I want to thank you both. And I just want to close. Normally John Meister would be here, but we've had a technical difficulty, and I just want to say that we're going to, number one, Thrive is always operating in the red, and it really is up to our community, and we really depend on our community for supporting us. And so there are ways that you can be able to donate even on our website. And I believe that Elizabeth is going to post, I'm not sure if that's the case, in the chat room, some information. But please, if you can make a donation to Thrive, that would be terrific. Our next conversation is going to be on January 27th. The topic is going to be around transgender. We haven't finalized the exact title of that, but it's certainly a very important topic for us to be covering. Elizabeth is also going to post a survey. If you could take some moments to just express your experience for tonight, that would be helpful for us to take a look at. If you have any ideas for future talks that you feel will be of importance, please contact us at Thrive. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this talk, along with every Thrive talk that's been given, is now available in the video library on our website, which is thrivecc.org. So feel free to share these videos with other people. And I think I might have covered everything by now. Elizabeth, if I've left anything out, there is Elizabeth did post in the chat room that the feedback link is there for the survey. That would be terrific.
You're good, Steve.
What's that?
You're good.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks so much. And Amanda's posting that if any questions, Amanda, you want to just say it out loud?
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions about senior housing in general, myself and our executive director, we've both been in the industry for 20 years. We'd be happy to answer any questions, as well as we open our doors for you guys coming to our caregiver support group. So just let us know, and I posted a phone number for us, you to reach out to us.
Well, thank you, everybody. We as the panel are going to remain on, and we're going to, but close to the general public right now. So thank you so much for joining us for this Thrive talk, and hopefully January 27th, and there'll be another one around racism in February, I believe. And so once again, thanks so much, and have a nice night. Take care.